So more thoughts on what originally started out as an SK450, turned into an HJ450, and is now something completely different. Let's move that out of the way because it's in the shot. I've changed some more things. I've changed out the flight controller. Originally started with a KK2 board, which is great to start off with. It's nice and easy to set up. The on-screen display is very nice because you can do things about while you're out and about. But everybody was saying that you should really have a look at the Naze32. It's a nice, powerful little board. I think it's got a 16-bit chip in rather than an 8-bit chip. They reckon it's responsive. They reckon it works just straight out of the box. Been on lots of YouTube videos. I think the Australian guy, RC Model Reviews, was talking about it. Said it's lovely. So I bought one of those. There's one in there at the moment. It is hiding in here. But I've also got another one, and I'll tell you why I've got both of them. Bought one. You have to do a bit of soldering. It's not particularly difficult to do the soldering to get them in place. You have to solder in these pins here and these pins here. There's a pin on the top. There's some pins over here as well. Yeah, it's not particularly difficult. Just hold everything in place nicely. I would strongly recommend that you get a jumper cable in and put a jumper cable, if we're ever going to focus, on these ones here. So put the jumper cable across in here as you've soldered the other side, because otherwise the pins will float around. Just say put the jumper cable, not a jumper cable, a servo cable. Put a servo cable on there, hold 3 of the pins in place, solder, 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 move the servo cable and solder the next ones in place. Yeah, very nice. You do all the configuration on a PC. You hook it up via a micro USB socket on the back. You can actually, and that's something I didn't write down to talk about, you can also do configuration via Bluetooth. So I put that in, and at the same time I swapped out my ESCs. I had original multi-star 20 amp ESCs. I changed them for Afro ESCs, which were Simon K firmware flashed. That's I originally did that because I wasn't particularly convinced that I was going to be able to flash my own ESCs, and it was a case of, if I mark one of them up, I can't fly the bloody thing, so let's order some Afro ones. Put those on. Afterwards I had a go at flashing the multi-star ones, and they seem to go in. There is a knack. You do want to provide independent power to them. I hooked up a battery via the thicker red and black power cables coming out of it, because they wouldn't flash without any independent power on it. You're supposed to put resistors in and stop spikes and everything like that. Mine, I didn't. I seem to have been lucky. You might need to actually do that. So I put the new flight controller on. I put the new ESCs on, and it was brilliant. So it's very level, it's very stable, it's incredibly responsive. One of the things I didn't actually realise was, on my old transmitter, I had the one which came with the SK kit from Hobby King. I had a dual rate switch, and you flipped it up and you flipped it down, and it set dual rates on the thing. And I was flying in low rate. That's interesting, because what you can see when you plug the flight controller into a computer and flip the dual rate switch is it nudges everything, and it nudges everything down. And you think, okay, that's fair enough. It nudges everything down from 1000 to 2000. It shifts it all down a bit, but it also shifts the middle down. And if you shift the middle down, it's going to muck about with your trims like mad. So if you switch over from dual rate to high rate, all of a sudden you're drifting off to the left or the right. Something's come through the letterbox. Hopefully that's my Christmas presents. So that was a bit of a pain. Anyway, I went out with the new flight controller in, flew it about a bit and took it up high and did a flip. And it was great. Did the first flip on there. It was incredibly high up, but there was more wind than I thought there was. and the quadcopter is basically going off in a direction. Now, I've said before, I've added these balls on, but they're not as great as you think they are. When you see something like that from a distance, you think, okay, that is balls away from you facing upwards. But that is balls away from you facing downwards. Actually, it's not going to be that way round. But there's other aspects that you can see from a distance where it looks very similar and you can't tell which way it's going. Anyway, the wind was taking this thing away and I had to cut the power. And I've got a video with no video because the camera's pointing in a different direction, but you do get sound and you hear it hit the ground, and my God, does it go crash. Anyway, I went round, found the quad about 3 or 4 feet away from a parked car, which it didn't hit, thank God, because otherwise I'd have done hundreds or thousands of pounds worth of damage to the thing, and did a bit of damage to the quad. Strange enough, I didn't break any props. Ever since getting my new quad, I haven't, getting the new props rather, haven't broken any of them, touch wood. I've got spares, but when I didn't have any props, I kept breaking the things. Now I've got props and not breaking the things. In one of the first videos, I mentioned changing the props out for the 8-inch props over the 10-inch props. That was actually incorrect. If you're using these motors and you're using a 3-cell battery, they recommend using 10-inch props. I think if you change the battery out to a 4-cell battery, then they say use the 8-inch props. So that was incorrect. Anyway, so crashed it, took it back home. I broke my 808-16 camera. This is actually a repaired one. Got some Velcro on the back because I stick it on the front on the Velcro there. The green tape is actually so that if it pops off in flight and you're wandering around the field, you've got a chance of finding it. Might change that tape for red or something like that. So I managed to break the camera. I managed to break, there was a tiny little ribbon cable inside there. Managed to tear that off. My original lid came down and severed some cables. It severed one of the ESC cables, so I had to resolder that. That wasn't too much of a problem. It actually cut through the aerial on my original Turnigy receiver. Again, that's not going to focus. So the Turnigy receiver came with a transmitter, and you can buy them from Hobby King. I wasn't not even sure if they're in stock or out of stock. They're certainly not in the European warehouse or the UK warehouse. And when you look at the transmitter will more or less only take those things. They're pretty great, but they're very, very tiny. Well, very tiny is very nice. Yeah, tried to fix it and didn't have much joy in doing that. So instead, I replaced it with a Turnigy 9X transmitter. Going to get an awful lot more options on the Turnigy 9X. People give it some respect. They say it's a proper transmitter. I'm sure the Spectrum guys will go, rather a Spectrum, but yeah, so would I. I can't afford it. And there's some other ones which have got on-screen display things on there, but it's very nice. One of the things I don't like is, despite having all these switches on it, not many of them will actually send information to the flight controller. I think that one there will, the one at the back will. A lot of the other ones are just information to go internally to the transmitter, so that it will change bits and pieces around. It would be quite handy if I could send more information to the flight controller. The flight controller will take inputs from 4 auxiliaries, I think, and that will be important for bits and pieces I'm going to talk about. That is a 3-position switch, and I'd love to work out how I can get that to send information to the flight controller. I'm not sure if I can. If anybody can tell me how to send that to the flight controller, please put that in the comments. I really would appreciate it. That comes with that receiver. That is the receiver which originally came with the thing, which with the old one. It is bloody huge. It is an... This really won't focus today, this camera. an 8-channel receiver, which is nice, but I'm not sure I've actually got use for the 8 channels at the moment. Didn't really like that too much, so I went off and bought some Hobby King compatible ones. It sits somewhere in the middle size wise, so yeah, that's quite nice. And so I've had to shuffle everything around to get that all to go on, and unfortunately it meant my original pot didn't work, so I'm now on with that, which sits on the top and bolts on. That is a Marks and Spencer's Pilau rice pot. Fantastic. So that now sits on the top and covers the components up. So from there I went on and had a look at GPS. The GPS sat on the top there originally came out of my housemate's CX20, which he crashed in quite a bad way and absolutely destroyed. But the GPS unit sat in the house for ages, and I thought, I'll have that. It was a 6-wire GPS unit, and some of which was pretty obvious and some of which wasn't quite so obvious. There was obviously power and ground. Then there was 4 other wires. When I scraped away some rubber gunk which was on the front here, it actually told me what the wires were. 2 of those wires can go from that. 2 of them go into an ESC section to get power, and then 2 of them go into the radio section. And then you've then got GPS functionality. You go into the Naze32, you feature GPS, turns it on. I think you set it as, again, I'm guessing now, I've got this set up as Ublox. It is a 1575R-A GPS unit. Can't seem to find out whether it's Ublox or the other one, which is NEMEA or something like that. So I've set it up as Ublox, got it set up as default baud rate, and it will send information to the flight controller about where it is. I've also installed, there's 2 Naze/MultiWii apps for Android available. The one which is actually labelled up MultiWii, I think it's actually slightly better. It does some nice things on here. So that will talk to that thing there, which is a Bluetooth adapter. Again, that's plugged in here. That plugs into 2 little sockets on the top here, which you can use to do control, to talk to the Bluetooth adapter. I originally tried, when I put the Naze in, to actually plug that in there instead. It doesn't actually work. It needs to go in here. You need to look that up if you want to. Again, it needs to get power, come off these ones at the front. So the GPS now will tell me where I am, tell me my position, and it's actually pretty damn accurate. I was out yesterday, day before, and I got 11 satellites, and it's fantastic. But you can't actually do a lot with it on the default board. The default board doesn't come with a barometer or a magnetic compass, and you need the magnetic compass to do GPS position, hold, and return to data. Yeah, you actually need that on there, which is a pity. So again, thinking I was doing something clever, the other 2 wires which come out of that are actually for a magnetometer. There's a magnetometer and the GPS in there. It's already getting power from here. Underneath that board, on, I'll find the other one. Again, you might not be able to see this because this thing's refusing to focus. There are 2 little pads here, and they will actually let you add in a separate compass, which I thought fantastic. Soldered 2 wires on that with a JTS connector on the thing, and flipped it over, went to put it on the board, and of course I've got the wires coming out going that way. Thought, oh, sod it. Only way which is inconvenient. I'd much rather they came out at the bottom. Left to the right would have been good either. So took it out, flipped it over, heated the pads up, pulled the wires off, and took off one of these little copper pads. And I thought, sod it. You can replace them, but there's pretty tricky to do. They don't actually have any traces going to them. They're very, very small. And I thought, oh, I really can't be doing with this. So I've actually ordered the full version. So that is the acro version, which for most people will absolutely do. If you're flying out point to point, if you want to add an FPV system onto the thing, you're more than good to do that. So this, say, has got a barometer and a magnetic compass. I think it may have actually something else on there as well. I can't think what. Apparently I'm going to have to put a bit of gauze or cotton wool over the top of here because it won't like wind whistling over the top of it. Apparently it mucks about with the barometer, but we can do that. We can cover that up quite nicely, put my little plastic lid on, and hopefully that'll be enough. So that should allow me to do position hold and return to home. Return to home is really the thing I want. I want to be able to get it away from me and flip a switch and see if it'll come back. Now, how good it is, I don't know. I'm using base flight at the moment. That's recently had GPS stuff put in. Timecop doesn't really like GPS. He's a fly it by hand, zip it about, do fun things. I think he's anti-flying GPS. He's certainly anti-Naze and DJI. It's quite funny when you buy one of these boards, it says you may not use this on a DJI frame. Well, mine's not a DJI frame, it's actually a DJI knockoff frame, so I don't feel too unhappy about it, but it'll work on virtually anything. For the future, the next thing to probably do is put some lights on the thing. A friend of mine's given me some strips of LED lights. Again, I don't really want to add more weight and more weight and more weight. It still weighs just under 1 kilo, but I'm going to probably put some lights on here, some lights on here, some lights on there, and lights on there. Maybe either or put some lights underneath on here as well, just so that I can get orientation better, and go from there. And then where from there? FPV maybe. FPV is going to start getting expensive again. I found a Sony equivalent little security camera. They seem to be the one to get. The resolution seems to be decent but not high definition, and the response times are very fast. A tiny little 5.8 transmitter, and then you need to get a screen. The camera looked about 12 quid, the transmitter looked about 30, the screen looked about 60, and that's about as cheap as you seem to be able to do it. If you want to start adding fat shark goggles and everything like that on top, you're going to start adding a lot of money. So that's really mainly what I've done recently. Other bits and pieces I've bought myself a LiPo bag. Everybody says, oh, you shouldn't carry LiPos about unshielded. There's some interesting videos on LiPo setting fire on the internet, so I thought, okay, we'll buy one of those. Also bought a battery voltage checker. That's pretty nice. That's quite nice to be able to go out and say, right, okay, I've got this voltage on the thing. Technically, you can actually just clip that on, and I could Velcro that on there. The beepers on those things are pretty damn good, so that would be quite nice. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be drawing a lot of its own power, so go from there. But again, it's getting better. I'm getting a bit more flight time. After my crash, I stayed away from it a bit, but we are just coming up for Christmas now, so the weather's very, very good for this time of year, but it's still slightly windy, and if it's blowing about, I'm having a hard time. Anyway, yeah, still having fun, changing things around, enjoying the building more than the flying. But if anybody's got any comments, please post comments. I put a couple of questions as I was talking. I can't remember what the hell they were, but if you know any of the answers, please post them. Yeah, Turnigy transmitter switches. The one which is labelled up AUX3, the 3-position one, I'd love to know how to do extra things with that and send that information to the receiver. Anyway, thanks for watching.